Story 1. So, you know how life throws curvy balls at you, right? Well, let me tell you about the crazy roller coaster ride I've been on, all thanks to my lovely neighbor, Karen. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all about living and let live, but this woman takes it to a whole new level. So, there's me and my hubby, just your regular folks living in a not-so-regular neighborhood. We got this cat, Cleo, a white and brown beauty we adopted when we were visiting Egypt. She's got this vibe, like she's seen the pyramids or something. Anyways, Cleo's our little ball of fur, and we adore her. Now, Karen, oh boy, where do I start? This woman, she's got more drama in her life than a soap opera. She's always eyeballing us, messing with our trash like it's her personal treasure trove. It's annoying, but we mostly shrugged it off as Karen being Karen. Fast forward to the day things got real. Hubby calls me up in the middle of the day, all frantic. Turns out, our house got broken into while he was at work. I'm panicking, thinking, great, there goes the TV and maybe my favorite mug. But no, nothing was missing. Nada, zilch, except for Cleo. You see, Cleo ain't just any cat. She's been with us through thick and thin, a furry confidante who's witnessed our highs and lows. She's got this magical way of curling up on your lap when you're feeling down, and suddenly the world's a better place. Losing her, it felt like losing a piece of my heart. So, there we are, back from our short trip, and I'm on the hunt for Cleo. Trash cans, under the bed, you name it. Hubby's trying to console me, but I can't shake off the feeling that something ain't right. Then, I find it. Cleo's collar, destroyed and tossed in the trash. Now, I'm not Sherlock Holmes, but something's fishy, and it ain't the cat food. I'm not the type to cause a ruckus, but Cleo was family, and you don't mess with family. So, I hit the streets, or rather, the neighborhood. It's like a feline version of Where's Waldo, I'm calling her name, knocking on doors, and getting weird looks from the neighbors who probably think I've lost it. And then it happens. I'm standing in front of Karen's house, and I hear it. Cleo's distinct meow. My heart does a somersault. I look at Karen's place like, seriously, lady? I ain't one for confrontation, but Cleo's more than just a cat. She's a part of us. I knock on Karen's door, trying to keep my cool. She opens it, all innocent-like. Hey, what's up? I'm like, cut the crap, Karen. Where's Cleo? She gives me this blank look. Cleo? Your cat, right? Haven't seen her. Now, I'm not a detective, but I'm also not an idiot. Cleo's meowing is practically echoing from her house. I push past Karen, and there she is, our precious Cleo, looking terrified. I'm fuming. What the hell, Karen? You took my cat? She tries to act innocent. Your cat? I don't know what you're talking about. I point at Cleo. That's my cat, and that's her collar in my trash. Karen stammers. Well, she just wandered in. I thought she was a stray. I'm not buying it. Cleo's giving me the get-me-out-of-here look. I scoop her up, and we make a beeline for home. I don't have time for Karen's nonsense. I get Cleo settled, and she's purring like she's just won the lottery. I'm relieved, but I'm not letting Karen off the hook. I march over to her house, and this time, I'm not knocking politely. Listen, Karen, I don't know what game you're playing, but Cleo is not your plaything. She's family, got it? Karen tries to play innocent, but I'm not having it. I didn't mean any harm. I just thought she was a stray, trying to help. Help my foot. I give her the stare of 1,000 angry cat moms and say, stay away from Cleo. Stay away from us. Got it. So there I am, standing in front of Karen, Cleo safely in my arms, and she has the audacity to tell me I can't have my own cat back. The nerve of this woman, I swear. I take a deep breath, trying to keep my cool, but I can feel the anger simmering beneath the surface. You can't have the cat, she says, like she's the queen of the universe. I narrow my eyes at her. Oh, I can't, huh? Well, Karen, let me enlighten you. This cat right here, I give Cleo a little pat, is mine. She's got a home, and that home is with me and my husband. Now, step aside. Karen crosses her arms, a smug smile on her face. You can't just barge in here and take things. Now, normally, I'm not one to threaten, but she's pushed me to the edge. Karen, you messed with the wrong person. I have security cameras, and they caught you breaking into my house. You want to play this game? Fine. I'll call the cops for break and entry. Her eyes widen a bit, and for the first time, I see a flicker of uncertainty. But she's not one to back down easily. You're bluffing. I pull out my phone and make a show of dialing 911. Guess we'll find out, won't we? As the phone rings, I glance at Cleo, who's looking at Karen like she's some kind of villain in a cat superhero movie. The cops pick up, and I explain the situation. They tell me they'll send someone over. Karen's face is turning paler by the second. Look, let's not involve the cops. It's just a cat. Just a cat? I can't believe the audacity. Karen, Cleo is family, and breaking into someone's house? That's a crime. Before Karen can protest further, I hear the sirens in the distance. The cops arrive, and I lay out the whole saga for them. Karen's stuttering, trying to come up with some excuse, but it's falling apart faster than a house of cards in a hurricane. I mention the security cameras, and that's when she really starts to panic. The cops are professional, but you can tell they're enjoying the drama. One of them asks, "Mind if we take a look at those cameras?" I nod, and we all head over to my place. Sure enough, the cameras caught Karen red-handed, breaking and entering 101, courtesy of my lovely neighbor. The cops turn to Karen, all serious now. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for breaking and entering." She starts protesting, but it's futile. I press charges because, you know what? Enough is enough. Cleo might be back, but this woman needs a lesson. You can't just mess with people's lives and expect no consequences. As they lead Karen away in handcuffs, I feel a mix of satisfaction and disbelief. I never thought I'd be in a situation where my neighbor would try to steal my cat and break into my house. Life is wild, man. Story 2. As stated in a previous post of mine, I work as a cleaner in a very large downtown mall in a very populated city. Last week, I was doing my job as usual when I noticed a table with 2 trays full of empty takeout wrappers from the food court. I was about to dispose of them when I noticed there were a few fries left and a coat hanging on the back of the bench. I immediately left it be and continued on with working. About an hour later, I realized the coat was still there with the wrappers untouched. I cleared the table and gave the coat a quick look over. It was a very thin spring jacket from Walmart, had the George band tag. There was no weight to the coat indicating anything was in the pockets. We have policies in regards to stuff like this. If it's transient, we immediately throw it out. If it's something like paperwork with sensitive information /mail/ something expensive, we bring it to the security office. If it's a wallet or purse, we have to stay with it while security comes to retrieve it. If it's something like jackets, gloves, hats, we place it next to garbage cans closest to where we found it. The cans have a large counter area for this. If it is not collected by the end of the night, we throw it out. It's unfortunate. But the building is quite large with thousands of people going through it every day. If we were to put everything in the lost and found, we would need a very large space to keep it all. So I walked 15 feet over to the closest counter space and placed it there before going on my last 15-minute break. During my break, the mall was closing, so I guess this entitled dad, we'll call him Bill, started making his way back to collect his stuff. I was just getting back on the floor when I get a call on the radio that Bill was asking about his coat and food that he had left. I told him where to look for his jacket and went to filling out my paperwork. All of a sudden, there was a clean-cut tall man, Bill, stomping over to me, dragging his 7-year-old kid behind him, screaming at me. I calmly tried to talk to him and explained why I moved the coat and where it was, but he didn't want to listen to any of it, demanding that I go get his coat. So I bring him over to where I had left the coat, but it was gone. I apologized to Bill and state that mall employees are not responsible for personal belongings left unattended. I then suggested that he go check with the security office because another customer might have brought it to them. Bill began to scream so loud at me that his face was turning red and spit was flying everywhere, saying how he left it there along with his food to show that he was a customer while he continued shopping. He felt that by leaving the empty food wrappers showing that he bought something in the building meant that it was my responsibility to watch and protect his coat. He then started insisting that I owe him 2 meals because he wasn't done with the food. I have dealt with similar situations before, so I try to keep my composure while I explained to him that there was no food other than a few fries left, and that mall employees are not responsible for stuff that people leave unattended. Then I called security. It turned out that Bill had his car house keys in the pocket of his coat, and he purposely left it there because although I didn't see him, he seen me, and that it was my job to watch his stuff. His poor son was crying, but this didn't stop Bill from freaking out, trying to drag anyone passing by into the situation, pointing at me like I was the bad guy. I only had an hour left of my shift, and by the time security was able to walk him down to the office, my shift was done, and I had to go tear my cart down to leave. Bill came back the next morning demanding to speak with my manager. While talking to her, he kept demanding that I be fired, but my manager just kept apologizing, stating that his coat was not my responsibility and that I was only following protocol. So yesterday Bill apparently showed up to the mall again, this time walking around talking to any store employees he could find that would listen to his sob story about his wife dying, to then start demanding for them to tell him my name and address because he plans on suing me for his pain and suffering for having to walk home and the cost of the 2 meals, expensive jacket, and the key replacements. Most of the people he spoke to were even sure of who he was talking about, never mind any of the other information. Even the ones who did would never give out any of that info, but instead message me on Facebook giving me the heads up. I don't understand how someone can feel so entitled that they expect cleaners to be coat check at a mall, without even speaking to them first. Story 3. For context, I recently revisited my old workplace and remembered this story. 5 years ago, I used to work for a large electronics store in Scandinavia. We sold everything from televisions to dishwashers. Being a physical store, we had a lot of display items and often sold them at a lower price when the product was discontinued. It's important to note that we rarely had the original packaging or manuals available, which will be relevant later. This story takes place on a late afternoon, about 30 minutes before closing time. I was working a shift in the computer department when I was asked to assist in the camera section of the store since I was the go-to person for cameras. I was greeted by a couple, who I would guess were in their late 50s, and they were looking at one of the display models. I walked them through the camera specifications, let them test it out, and explained that while we had all the necessary accessories, the original manual and packaging had been discarded. They seemed perfectly fine with this, especially after I offered them a fantastic deal on the camera. We headed to the checkout, where they paid, and everything seemed to be going smoothly. That is until the husband turned to me and asked, "Where's the manual?" I thought to myself, oh no, maybe I didn't explain it well enough. So I started to explain again, reiterating that we didn't have the original manual, but that it was easily accessible online. I had even included a link to the manual on their receipt. This explanation did not sit well with the husband, who began raising his voice at me. He said, "Online? I bought this product, and I want the manual physically so I can read through it at home." I understood his frustration and tried explaining that I normally would print the manual. However, the manual for this particular camera was about 650 pages long. It's worth noting that both the husband and wife were more than capable of looking up the manual online, as I had seen them browsing the web earlier, checking out reviews for the camera. The husband angrily berated me for about 5 minutes, ranting about how this wasn't a proper way to run a business and insisting that he wouldn't leave without the manual. I tried to explain that the manual was 650 pages long, how much time it would take to print, and that we were closing in around 10 minutes. But he was having none of it and was adamant about not leaving without the manual. Now, I am usually a kind and respectful person and will do everything I can to resolve a problem, But he was being disrespectful, and I was being paid by the hour anyway. So, in my best customer service voice, I told him, "Sorry, sir, of course, the customer is always right," and started printing the 650 pages while the husband looked smug, probably feeling like he had won over the big corporation. But there was a catch. The printers we had at the sales desk were only meant for printing receipts, so they couldn't print double-sided. Although they were relatively fast, they were not 650 pages fast, and could only hold about 300 sheets of paper at a time. As the minutes ticked by, with each sheet of paper that emerged from the printer, the man's smug expression began to fade. His wife, who had initially seemed passive, started to look annoyed and a bit embarrassed. Then the printer ran out of paper, and you could see the relief in their eyes as they thought the printing was finally done. But that relief quickly vanished when they saw me coming with a huge stack of paper to refill the printer. 20 minutes and 400 pages in, the wife started to look even more desperate, realizing that they were the only customers in a store that had closed 10 minutes ago. The husband was beginning to realize his mistake and nervously began to ask when the printing would be finished. I just smiled with my best customer service smile and said, "We're about 2/3 of the way there." He sighed and continued to watch the mountain of paper slowly grow larger and larger. Another refill, and 200 pages later, the husband's defeat was evident. He finally asked if he could just take what had already been printed and leave. But by then, only about 50 pages remained, so I told him, "We're almost done, and I would hate for you to leave without the last pages, just in case you miss something important." When the printer finally stopped, I handed him the entire 650-page manual, still smiling, and said, "Here you go. I hope you have a great day and enjoy the camera." They quickly left the store, silent and defeated, and I never saw them again. Story 4. Here's a bit of background before I tell you the incident. I'm a 23-year-old male, and for the last 12 months I've been suffering from chronic leg pain and depression anxiety. The leg pain is caused by varicose veins in my left leg and damaged muscle and extreme eczema related to the varicose veins. The pain is one of the worst pains I've ever felt, and for the last 12 months I've had pain from the moment I wake up to the moment I sleep. It wakes me up, and I'm lucky to get more than 3-4 hours sleep a night. I have very limited motion in my leg and need a walking stick to get around. To tackle the pain I'm taking tramadol, pregabalin teva, co-codamol and ibuprofen. Even with all this, the pain is still there, and this just takes the edge off it. I'm currently waiting for an operation to fix it. Due to this condition, I've been isolated since January and basically stay in bed all the time. I only leave my house to go to the doctor's, hospital, or my local shops, which is 5 minutes from my house. This walk takes me about 10+ minutes as I need to take breaks. Now you have an idea of my background, I'll get to the Karen incident. I was sitting on the bus on my way home from the hospital. The bus, which was almost at capacity due to the COVID regulations, meaning every other chair was out of use. I was sat at the front in one of the seats reserved for people with disabilities when Karen got on the bus. Karen came up to me and said, "Excuse me, but you've got to move and stand because I need to sit down as I've been shopping all day and my legs are tired." I looked at her and held my walking stick up and said, "I'm sorry, but I can't move. I need this seat as I can't stand for long, and I won't be able to keep my balance when the bus is moving as I have a problem with my leg. I'm sorry, I think there might be some seats at the back." Karen looked at me and, "No you don't. Don't lie to me, you're too young to be like that. You're just doing it because you're too lazy to stand. Get up now or I'll make you." I just froze up and didn't know what to say. Then she grabbed my arm and started pulling me of the seat. "Get off now. Stop being a lazy shit. You kids these days have no respect." She pulled more and I fell of the chair to the floor, hitting my head on the pole where their button is and busted my lip open. The bus driver came over and helped me up and asked if I was okay. I just sat there. I couldn't speak. I was shaking and started hyperventilating. I was frozen. I didn't know how to react. I didn't know what was going on around me and was having a panic attack. One of the passengers came over and tried helping me calm down, while the driver kicked off the Karen. I don't really remember this part and what was said apart from the passenger and driver helping calm me. Once I calmed and stopped crying and hyperventilating, the driver asked if he could do anything and if I was okay. He gave me a bottle of water and the passenger reassured me that I'll be okay, and they kicked Karen off. They gave me a tissue to clean the blood off, and the bus went off. I was still in shock and shaking. I didn't even look back to see if Karen was at the bus stop. Once we got to my stop, I got off and went home and locked myself up in my room. Since then, I've not been able to leave my room when my housemates are in the shared areas without having a panic attack. I can't be in the same room as people or go shopping. I have to get a taxi now to go to my hospital appointments, and even then I feel extremely uncomfortable and avoid speaking with the driver. This experience made me realize how vulnerable I am, and I can't go out anymore as I fear for my safety. If something happens, I can't run away or defend myself, and it scares me so much. Even talking about this incident to my family or my therapist causes me to have a panic attack. This experience has broken me completely and ruined my ability to leave my house. I don't know how to overcome this. Story 5. Hi, just want to say this is my first post here, so if I make any mistakes or use the wrong flair, please let me know. I'm still a bit confused about how things work here. Also, I'm on mobile, so please excuse any spelling mistakes. So, some context that's worth knowing is that we have a small dog with a hernia. At least, I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. Basically, he has some issues with his back or spine, which, as long as we're careful with him, like not letting him jump, climb, or stress his back too much, it slowly gets better and heals. But if not, it can lead to complications that might require surgery. That's at least what I've been told by my parents. Ever since then, we've been very careful with our little guy, which is why this story especially frustrates me. It was a normal day. My mom, her boyfriend, and I were planning to go on a trip with our car. We were getting all our luggage into the car, while my mom had our dog on a leash, getting him ready for the trip. Suddenly, I heard some panicked sounds from my mom and her boyfriend. I looked back and saw an almost equally big dog attacking our dog. We were all panicking because we still had our hands full and didn't know what to do. My mom's boyfriend, let's call him Jack, tried to get between the dogs and shoo the rogue dog away, saying some not so nice words in the process. Luckily, the little rascal got scared of him, probably because of all the noise we made as well, and ran back to its owner, who, at the time, was literally on the other side of the very large parking lot. And I can't stress this enough, she was very far away and walking very casually and slowly, like nothing happened. She wasn't even calling the dog or anything. I could see she had the leash in her hand, but for some reason, she didn't bother putting it on her dog until it ran back to her. Jack then started to scold her because of how irresponsible and careless she was. Not only did her dog almost harm ours, but again, this was in the middle of a parking lot. What would she do if a car randomly backed out of a space without looking? I'm still so confused about how she thought this was a good idea. Also, to be clear, Jack didn't say anything insulting or call her any names. He was just telling her not to pull this kind of nonsense and to be more responsible. She didn't even look at him and just walked away. Not even a sorry or anything. She flat out ignored eye contact and got out of there. We all took a sigh of relief and wanted to process what had just happened. I don't know if I made this clear, but this all happened very fast. We were about to start packing again until we saw what I could only assume was her boyfriend starting to walk toward us. I think we all had a bit of an oh no reaction when we saw him, because he was doing that generic frat boy ready to throw down walk right towards us, chest out, hands clenched up, and not long after, he said something along the lines of, "What did you say to my girlfriend?" to Jack. I don't know if this was a smart idea, but I immediately pulled out my phone and started to record, just in case he was actually about to attack Jack. You know, something about evidence if we wanted to report this to the police. A very panicked decision on my part, lol. I don't know if it was because he saw my phone or if he got scared of Jack, who wasn't backing down and was visibly standing his ground. But when he got close enough to talk, He kind of calmed down and started to speak pretty normally. I think he assumed that when Jack was cursing at the dog, he was actually talking to his girlfriend, but there's also a chance he just wanted to find an excuse to lash out at us, to be honest. Anyway, we almost immediately made it clear that we didn't curse at his girlfriend, even though it would have probably been very justified if we did. Lol. And then we angrily explained how what she did was insanely careless and irresponsible, and how we had a dog with medical issues that could have worsened if he had actually gotten injured in this encounter. He just kind of stood there, not knowing what to say, until he murmured something under his breath and walked off. You'd think this story ends here, right? Well, not exactly. After we were driving and still talking about those entitled jerks, we heard a loud car horn behind us. The car behind us then moved to the left, where we could see it, and the driver stuck his hand out of the open window and made a rude gesture in our general direction before driving off. Jack says he saw that it was the boyfriend from before, but I can't 100% confirm that since I didn't see the driver. We were a bit scared that he now knows what our car looks like and might try to do something to it, like keying it or whatever, but luckily that hasn't happened yet. Knocking on wood not to jinx it as I type. Moral of the story, please do literally anything else but what these people did. Story 6. I am a 28-year-old man, currently training to be a cardiologist while pursuing a PhD. In addition to managing various international projects, I also have a part-time job at an outpatient clinic. I've been living alone for the past 3 years and have always had a close relationship with my mother, who is 45. I believed our bond was stronger than most of my peers' relationships with their parents. However, I always sensed a bit of dissatisfaction from her regarding how I handled certain aspects of my life, like she felt I didn't work hard enough. Despite these feelings, I never delved too deeply into them. Everything took a sharp turn about a year ago when I introduced my parents to my new girlfriend. I honestly thought they would be thrilled. She's well-mannered, college-educated, and incredibly intelligent. It never crossed my mind that her tattoos would be an issue. On the day of the introduction, my mother called me, and the next day, she even came to my house as soon as possible. I was forced to listen as she expressed how deeply I had hurt her, labeled me as a bad son, and said that I had disappointed her. Within less than 2 hours, she managed to analyze my girlfriend and concluded that she was a bad person who liked to harm herself and was mentally unstable, all because she had tattoos. My mother then gave me an ultimatum. It was either her or my girlfriend. To make matters worse, she spread the news to the entire family, resulting in similar phone calls from my grandparents. After several emotional meetings and countless text messages, my mother retracted the ultimatum as if it never happened. However, in her eyes, I was supposed to make a compromise. I wasn't to mention my girlfriend, act as if she didn't exist, and continue visiting them as if nothing had changed. Naturally, this arrangement didn't work. Visiting them became emotionally draining, and every time I mentioned my girlfriend's name, it led to an argument. If my mother saw that I was at my girlfriend's workplace, she would send me blackmailing text messages. When I posted a photo with my girlfriend on social media, my mother unfollowed me. I tried limiting the frequency of visits to my parents, but every time I didn't show up, I would receive messages accusing me of being cold and not caring about their happiness. Even reducing contact didn't help. My mother always found a way to reach me. Of course, I always defended my girlfriend in front of them, and when they made inappropriate comments, I would end the conversation and leave. My girlfriend is unaware of many of these incidents. She doesn't deserve to suffer needlessly. It's unfair for her to be insulted by people who don't even know her, especially when she doesn't deserve it. None of my mother's negative predictions about her have come true. I've tried to find compromises and gradually ease my parents into at least a basic level of acceptance. However, I'm exhausted by this ongoing struggle and see no clear way out. I'm tired of hearing how I've failed as a person, how my parents sacrificed their whole lives for me, and how I'm ungrateful. They claim that I don't care about them, that my girlfriend is more important to me than they are, and that I'm selfish for not prioritizing their happiness. No argument seems to make a difference. It's as if my feelings don't matter. Whenever I bring up past events, they claim I misunderstood or that things supposedly happened differently than I remember. They argue that the whole situation is my fault because I knew my mother didn't like tattoos. But I've come to realize that this isn't really about my girlfriend, it's about me. My parents don't understand that I wasn't choosing between them and my girlfriend. I was choosing myself and my right to make my own decisions. Yet, they still believe that if I break up with her, everything will go back to normal, and we'll all get along. But I don't feel that way. I feel like they have completely humiliated me, and I question whether they are truly good people. I've even started doubting myself. I've tried many times to see the situation from my parents' perspective, wondering if perhaps I made a mistake and caused all of this. Objectively, I know I've achieved more in my career than my parents did in their entire lives. I have a perfect relationship with my girlfriend. I don't believe I'm morally at rock bottom. I've treated my girlfriend with the respect she deserves because she is the most important person in my life. I believe there are many things my parents could be proud of. Despite this, I feel trapped. Just the thought of living in the same city as my mother evokes a sense of suffocation, as if her constant scrutiny is always upon me. I'm not looking for advice. I just wanted to vent anonymously to some strangers on the internet and see if anyone has had a similar experience. I'm trying to find hope for improvement, though it's a bit of a joke at this point. I know exactly what I need to do, and I'm trying to find the inner strength to do it, to go to therapy and cut all ties with them. However, I find this extremely difficult due to our history. My father is a former alcoholic, and I was my mother's support during those tough times. I also feel sorry about the potential loss of contact with the rest of my family, especially my 23-year-old sister, who still lives with them, and my father. While they don't share my mother's views, they don't openly oppose her for the sake of household peace. It's challenging, especially because just over a year ago, everything seemed to be fine, or at least I didn't realize it wasn't. Story 7. I'm not entirely sure where to go from here or what to do, but I'm terrified of losing my sister. Any advice is deeply appreciated. I'll be reposting this in other similar subreddits. Thank you so much in advance. I, 17 female to male, am moving in with my boyfriend, 19 male, and his family in the coming weeks for college. I spoke to my parents tonight about my moving plans, and it went horribly as expected. For context, my parents, mid-40s, conservative, have been intensely abusive emotionally and verbally since I first came out to them as transgender when I was 12. I've been in therapy for a little over 2 years now and have been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder alongside the usual depression and anxiety. My parents overtly deny my post-traumatic stress disorder diagnosis and any signs of trauma because they simply don't believe I've endured anything traumatic. Despite them almost kicking me out at 15 for being transgender, repeatedly isolating me from all forms of communication and internet access for years on end, and forcing me to go to a gynecologist and get a birth control implant without my consent. When we spoke tonight, my dad brought up the potential of my transition, referring to it as self-mutilation and the product of brainwashing. He and my mom made it abundantly clear that if I were to medically transition, I would be completely cut off from the family, including my sister, 9 female, who I love more than anything in the world. They told me they have access to my health insurance. I'm insured under my mom until I can afford my own insurance or get on government assistance, and if they saw anything involving transgender healthcare, they would completely cut me off, shut off my phone, etc., because they consider my identity a genuine danger to the family and my sister. My dad repeatedly claimed that I was being manipulated into transitioning by my friends and that he refuses to have any part in my self-destruction. Both he and my mom repeatedly told me we were always family and that they would always love me and be supportive of me. My parents told me that if I transition, I'm making the decision to cut all communication and ties with them because I am disrespecting them. Normally, I keep quiet, but today I objected. I told them that's literally their decision, and they immediately got aggressive. Both jumped to tell me that it would actually be my choice that would cause that my choice to be cut off from my own flesh and blood because I chose to be who I am. My dad even told me I would have been a good, respectful person if I was just gay. My plan is to hold off on a legal and medical transition until, at the very least, I'm able to pay for my own things. I currently work part-time for $12 per hour, but I'm applying to places nearby that pay $15 to $16 and offer health care. I want to try delaying my medical transition for as long as I possibly can so I can maintain contact with my sister until she's old enough to understand the situation or find ways to get around possible restrictions in the future. I'm not sure how long I'll be able to do that, considering I'm absolutely miserable being pre-transition. And the main thing keeping me alive for so many years has been the possibility of hormone replacement therapy once I turn 18. My parents know I can't afford health insurance, that I would barely be able to afford my phone bill considering I'm a college student working a terrible part-time job, and they're dangling it all over my head, threatening to take all of that away and more in an instant just because I want to be who I am. I didn't even ask them to do these things for me. All I told them were my plans to move out and my intentions to pay for those things on my own, even though I'm aware of how difficult that will be. Too long, didn't read. Abusive parents are maintaining control over me after I leave for college, threatening to cut me out of the family entirely if I continue with my transition, including my little sister, who has no fault or involvement, and making it out to be my fault for wanting to be independent in the first place.